wonder, secrets unfold. True crime stories, let the intrigue be told. Grab a seat, get cozy, let's dive into the plot. With Mac J by my side, there's so much to be sought. Mods from the stars, they light up the night. Chillin' with Van, everything feels just right. Welcome to the mystery, the thrill, the thrill we embrace. Solving cases together we'll trace. With Tabby and Maggie, the journey's begun. With laughter and stories, we'll shine like the sun. Spirit Time vibes with Lisa and Mark. Tia and Mel igniting the spark. According to Lean, curiosity flows. A curious rose in a garden of woes. Sweet misery whispers, tales that enthrall. While Matt, Meg, and Jody, we gather them all. Welcome to the mystery, the thrill we embrace. Solving cases together we'll trace. With Tabby and Maggie, the journey's begun. With laughter and stories, we'll shine like the sun. So come along, join the fun tonight. In Aussie true crime, everything feels so right.
Hey, beautiful people.
Hi, everyone.
How are we all? Sorry about last week. We kind of didn't do a lot of our shows. Oh, the echo's still here. I can still hear it. We've got an echo at the moment. We're trying to... Okay. Yeah, it's still there. So we got my granddaughter on school holidays and I got caught up with her. Mac J's had appointments, so we're back. I gave out some memberships. So little Miss Sharon's got one. Our beautiful Ken, me, and Melly Jo. I really hope that fixes itself up. Hi, Tammy. How are you? Beautiful little Miss Sharon. How are you, my darling? You're very welcome. I'm glad it went to people we knew.
Yes.
Yeah, same. Honestly, I just want Easter to be over.
Me too.
But we do have our Easter show on probably going to be Friday because we're due to go Friday, and that's Good Friday. So we'll do our Easter special. Beautiful Megan, how are you, my darling? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh, it's been crazy here too. I thought with school holidays it wouldn't be so bad. But...
Oh crap! Sorry, Ozzy, I pressed something wrong.
It's all right. We'll get. Hang on. What did you press?
Oh, there's this thing on. I was trying to highlight Megan's comment, and then there's a link that says share your referral link, and I accidentally pressed it when trying to highlight it.
It's gone now. I understand that, Megan. Trust me. My grandkids are doing the same at the moment. And then I keep telling them they're giving me headaches, and they just tell me I'm too old. So thanks. I'm a 5-day horse camp. Oh, at least that would be fun, though. Beautiful Earth, how are you, my darling? Welcome in. Okay, so tonight we are covering William again, and I've made a little presentation of his timeline. I've pulled it up so many times, but keep getting this echo. So this is just a quick, it's got no noise. It's just a quick little timeline of William's case. So William Tyrrell on the 11th of September 2014. Are you hearing that echo? Or is it just me?
I'm hearing a little bit of it now, but not much.
Okay.
I don't know about chat.
On the 11th of September 2014, 3-year-old William Tyrrell, his foster parents, and his 5-year-old sister travelled 4 hours from Sydney to visit his foster grandmother in Kendal. His grandmother's house at Banadoo Drive is directly across the bush road from the Kendal State Forest, about 35 kilometres, 22 miles south of Port Macquarie. Yeah, you can hear it. Little Miss Sharon can hear it.
Okay.
So this is their house, like the grandmother's house. So between 10 and 10:05 on the 12th of September, William Tyrrell and his sister were playing hide and seek in the front and the backyard, while his foster mother and foster grandmother were sitting outside. His foster mother went inside to make a cup of tea. She became worried after she had not heard him and began searching the yard and house. Shortly after, William Tyrrell's foster father from going to Lakewood on a business and began searching the street and joining neighbours. So this is just a thanks, guys. Welcome in, Gypsy. You right, Miss Sharon? So this is just a quick sketch of what they're saying happened. Hang on, I'm just going to go into the settings again. See, I've got the echo cancelling on. See if that makes it any better.
It's a bit quieter.
Can you still hear us now? Is it still there?
Yeah, I can still hear.
There's still feedback. I'm not hearing it now.
I'm not hearing it either.
Can you still hear us in chat? Oh, thank you so much, Earth. Only Mac J's echo.
Okay.
It's just low volume. Hang on.
Oh, well, maybe it is me. So I'll
come back in.
I'll drop back in. Yeah.
That's why we're late coming in. We're trying to get rid of this echo. So yeah, so this little picture is just what they say happened. I mean, not all of us believe that this is what happened, but it's what they say happened. That he was playing with his sister. He's gone round the house. They haven't heard him, and that's when he disappeared. That's better? Okay. Well, hopefully when Mac J comes back in, we still... Thank you so much, Earth. Sweet dreams, my darling. Okay, so this was one of the... Okay, it was better when you... Maybe mute Mac J and take the talk.
Okay.
Just see if that stops it. So this is the last picture of William that was taken. There's a lot of commotion about this picture on what time it was actually taken, whether it was because it was in the phone at 7:30 and it looks like that the time was corrected to say that it was at 9:30. Is it better now, Miss Sharon? Okay. So this is just a closer up photo, like of that picture. So at 10:57, William Tyrrell's foster mother phoned the 000 emergency services to report him missing. The New South Wales Police Force arrived at 11:06. His foster mother's last memory was that William Tyrrell was intimidating a tiger's roar while running towards the side of the house, and that there was silence and he had disappeared. His foster mother looked for him, but without success.
Police emergency, this is Simone.
Yeah, hi, my son is missing. He's 3.5.
Okay.
Sorry,
What's your address?
Benaroon Drive,
Yep.
Kendall.
Okay. Benaroom Drive in Kendall?
Yes,
All right, I'm just going to bring that up on my map. It won't be a moment.
thank you.
How long has he been missing?
I think, we've been looking for him now for about 15 or 20 minutes, but
Okay.
I thought it could be 5, it could be longer, because he was just playing around here. We heard him, and then we heard nothing.
Okay. So what the nearest cross street
It's,
being Ellendale Crescent, is that right?
So what is it?
Ellendale Crescent?
I don't know. This is my mum's house.
Okay.
Hang on. There's another lady out helping us look for him. I'll see if I can find her. But it's Benaroon, BENAROON.
Yeah, I can see where you are. I'm just wondering. Yeah, so it's Benaroon Drive in Kendall, and I've got your nearest cross street as being Ellendale Crescent.
It could be. I don't know.
Okay. So he's been missing since about 10:30.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, can you describe him to me? How tall? Obviously not very tall.
No, he'd be about 2.5 feet. He's wearing a Spider-Man outfit.
Yep. What colour hair has he got?
He's got dark sandy-coloured hair. It's short, and he's got really big browny green-coloured eyes.
Okay. What's he got? Any shoes on? Do you know any other distinguishing features?
He's got a freckle on the top of his head when you part the hair on the left-hand side.
Yep.
You'll see a freckle on the top of his head.
Okay. All right. Do you know where he might have gone?
We actually live, Mum's property is near a state forest.
Okay.
And they're on huge blocks. We've walked up and down Benaroon Drive, and we can't find him.
Okay. What's his name?
William.
What's William's surname?
Tyrrell, Tyrrell.
Okay. Has he been known to sort of go anywhere?
No, this is the first time.
The first time
completely out of character.
There wasn't anyone suspicious in the area? Any vehicles?
No.
Okay.
Well, not that I'm aware of. I was out there talking with Mum and my other daughter, so.
Okay.
And we heard him roaring around the garden, and then I thought, I haven't heard him. I better go check on him and find him.
We'll send police to see you at Benaroon Drive in Kendall. We'll also get the message broadcasted to all the cars and people look out for him as well.
Yes,
okay.
Thanks very much. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And let's see if I can catch up with William. Woohoo! Here I come. Where's that William guy? You're doing really well. Here I come, William. I'm right next to you. Hello. Look at you. Have you finished?
No, I did.
Lick your fingers. Lick your hand. Happy birthday, William. Go, William. Yay!
He is so cute. I love watching that video. As I said, it was just a short little thing of the timeline just so that people remember. Morning, beautiful lunch lady. Morning. Welcome in. No, it's morning for you. So last week, even though we didn't make it in, we did have some movement in the case because on the 7th of April, the foster mother had to go to the Sydney District Court for her appeal hearing. And this made me really mad. I'm going to share my screen and show you. So it's Cheryl's foster mum's fresh legal fight, and this was on the 7th of April in the afternoon. It came out like about 6 o'clock at night because she actually went to court that day. So William Tyrrell's foster mum is fighting to have her assault and intimidation convictions overturned on appeal, saying that she was under extraordinary stress due to the unique and heartbreaking circumstances of the toddler's disappearance. So that is her excuse for what she did to William's sister.
How is the audio?
We can hear you.
Okay.
So yeah, how's that? The foster mother who cannot be identified. No, it's back. It's definitely on your side because when you're muted, it's not there.
Okay.
But as soon as you unmute,
I'll see what happens when I move to a different area. So I'll just mute now and move, and then come back.
Alright. The foster mother who cannot be named was convicted over a number of incidents which related to a child who is not William in 2021. On Monday, she appeared in Sydney Downing's Central District Court in an effort to have her convictions for intimidation and assault and her sentence overturned on appeal. She was found guilty of the intimidation relating to threats to slapping the child during an argument in 2021. As parts of the investigation into William's disappearance, police planted surveillance devices into the homes and car of William's foster parents. On a recording played to the court on Monday, the woman repeatedly admonished the child, saying at one point, "I'm going to slap you and I'm sick to death of you." And we've got to remember, this is William's sister.
Is that any better?
It is when you talk, but the noise is still there. Are you on your normal device?
Yeah, I am.
That's strange.
Yeah, I'll see. I'll check something else.
Okay. Can you go into your settings and see if your echo cancellation's on? Be in the audio settings of the StreamYard.
Okay.
However, her barrister, John Satton, argued that the intimidation conviction should be squashed because it was. Hang on. Okay, so where was I? Because it was incorrectly charged and the court attendance notice related to 3 separate incidents across a 3-month period. You say there should have been 3 charges on each, the judge asked during the hearing on Monday. Yes, Mr. Sutton said. Are you muted, MacJo?
No, I'm not. Is it better now?
Now it is.
Okay, cool.
I can't hear it. He argued that the charge sheet was defective at law. He further argued that the incident occurred at a time of an extraordinary degree of emotional stress. For the women who have been living under the shadow of William's disappearance for years without knowing what had been his fate. So it has been adjourned again. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, that's going on arguing it. And we'll get a decision for it now in May. It's back and it's really, really bad. All right, so tonight's podcast, we are up to number 8 on click. So it's number 8, and this is where the pressure builds. Episode 8, the pressure builds on both police and those pursuing police among cracks. He set it up.
Should have just tell me where we're going. We're heading into the township, I suppose you call it, of Kendall, where William Tyrrell appeared from.
Megan, she doesn't have any other kids in her care. She had William and William's sister. And then she continued to have William's sister up until that incident. And now William's sister has been returned to the biological mum.
This time, driving back to Kendal, I'm travelling with Gary Jubelin, the detective who led the investigation. How long has it been since you were here?
Oh, it would be a matter of 3 years, 4 years, I'd say, that, since I've been up here.
Like I've said before, Gary and I go back a long way. And my first impression of him was he's interesting.
It hasn't changed at all. And it brings back every memory in the book.
What memories?
I think an overriding one of sadness of what's happened in this town and what's happened to William.
Gary doesn't hide his feelings. He's capable of great compassion, but also anger.
With that sadness, there's a frustration. Probably a better term is anger, but I'll try to be nice and say frustration in the way that the matter's been handled.
He's driven.
It was a tough investigation, but it was an investigation that, I was up for the challenge. I'd been investigating homicide for a long time, and I was confident that, I would get a result on it.
There are other words people use to describe him, because Gary has made enemies. Partly because he had a way of getting in the newspapers and on television.
You seen this?
Yeah, well, he was kidnapped, dismembered, and then dumped, putting a strike force on him. I'm going to put my hand up.
Ryder, you go for gold, Gary.
Before he and I met, Gary had been the subject of a prime-time TV drama about his life and another of his investigations. That show was called Underbelly, and this is how they described him.
Gary Kevin Jubelin was an Aries, a practicing Buddhist, and drank green tea instead of coffee. His workmates called him Crazy Fuck.
The green tea and the nickname, that's all true. I'd add the shaved head, the nose he's broken 3 times boxing, the fact Gary meditates to find some inner balance, and can also be so demanding he's told more than one of his bosses to fuck off if they can't get him more time, resources, or staff for his investigations.
I heard you requested a solicitor. Know this. Every time you put your head up, I'm going to kick it.
But the thing that really stands out to me about Gary is the way he pursued his cases.
It's taken us years, and now I've got you.
To destruction.
So if you really want to help yourself, then you make a statement.
Putting pressure on a suspect.
Tell me what happened.
Doing everything he could think of to crack them.
Why you did it.
At the risk even of ruining their life or his own.
Yeah, we're heading down towards where William was last seen alive in Benaroon Drive, and it's something that has played very heavily.
I know, I loved the Underbelly episodes, but I didn't realise there was one on that either. Good morning, beautiful Jessie. Beautiful Anne, how are you, my darling?
In my life, this particular road, and we stop and look at the house. How does a child disappear from there? And we haven't got answers. And as New South Wales Police, we should be judged by it. These are the type of cases that you need to solve.
I'm Dan Box, and from news.com.au, this is Witness William Tyrrell. Episode 8, Pressure.
You know, you could feel the tension. You could feel that the bosses were doing things that they were all by the book. This might sound a strange thing to say, but you could just see there was attention to detail.
This is another of the cops who worked on the investigation into William's disappearance in September 2014.
Normally, you know, cops, we trivialize things because it's like, oh, we've been to 1 million missing kids and we found them. But for this to happen,
they don't want to be identified. So Nina, the producer on this podcast, is reading their words.
Is this better?
You got the sense of like, oh, everyone's definitely taking it on as a serious detective.
Yes, it sounds better. Talk again.
Okay, so is it better?
Yes.
Okay.
Heaps better. Yay. What did you do?
I switched to my phone.
Okay. Yeah, it's 100% better. There's no crackle at all.
Investigation.
But that doesn't mean everything was working smoothly.
As soon as we got there, we had tasks. So they're just kind of giving us stuff to do. But, you know, they weren't telling us much. I didn't really get a sense of or any briefing of how they were attacking it.
This was before Gary Jubelin was put in charge, when the strike force was being led by a detective called Hans Rupp.
Hans Rupp was pretty old school. I never had a conversation with him. Gary was the first person that when he came aboard, he wanted everyone to tell him what they thought. He didn't care whether I was a constable or I was a detective or if I was the boss. He wanted to know. He wanted to get everyone's ideas.
This was around the start of 2015 when Hans Rupp retired and Gary Jubelin took over the investigation.
When he came in and I met him and we chatted, that first day I saw him as a real fucking detective. He was the real deal. Like, I knew about the underbelly and all that bullshit, but, you know, it wasn't until he came on board that I really actually understood, oh, this is what we've got to do. We've got to put this timeline together. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. He wants everyone's input. He wants everyone to talk. He wants you to go and have a beer after work and discuss things and argue over ideas and theories, because that's how shit happens. I really enjoyed working under Gary's direction because he sort of thinks like a business person where it's like time. We've got to get this shit done. We've got a deadline. We've got to figure this out, you know?
Gary didn't want things to get slowed down by the petty bureaucracies you often run up against in the police force, like not wanting to pay overtime, or which police commander would let others use which resources, even if that meant Gary falling out with other bosses.
People will ask me about it, and what I say is
the thing is, too, that they do let the things slow down. That's how they become cold cases.
Exactly.
Tenacious, and he'll do things that you would expect cops in movies to do, but that's not reality. And he's the guy that would do that. So if one of my family members was murdered, I'd want Gary to investigate. That's how I explain it.
Gary also found supporters in William Tyrrell's foster parents, who were now approaching the anniversary of his disappearance.
The anniversary brings a huge amount of mixed emotions again. We don't have an outcome. We don't know whether he's whereabouts or anything.
This is William's foster father, speaking at the time to the journalist Leah Harris.
It's quite scary to think that we don't have, anything 1 year on. I cross my fingers. I look into the eyes of his sister and his mother, and just pray for his return.
The first time Gary met the foster parents, he looked at them as potential suspects.
When we were meeting, I could feel that he was just sizing me up, and, you could feel the suspicion coming all over again.
This is William's foster mother in another interview with Leah Harris.
At that point, I'd never heard of Gary Jubelin. I'd no connection or reference to the name whatsoever. I Googled him and I thought, wow, this is good. This is really good. He'd been on
a number of
high profile.
Yeah.
But I remember somebody telling me that he was the character on an Underbelly series. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And thinking, wow, okay. But what it gave us, I think, was this sense of we've got the right guy.
Eventually, Gary discounted the foster parents as likely suspects, just like Hans Rupp had done before him. And William's foster parents, they grew close to Gary.
We had the then Minister of Police telling us that he was New South Wales Police's top cop. We had people within the police force telling us we don't have anybody better. We trusted. We trusted police. We trusted him.
Between them, Gary Jubelin and William's foster parents turbocharged the investigation into the 3-year-old's disappearance. Instead of just being a police matter, it became a massive publicity campaign. The Where's William campaign launched in 2015. That August, there was this public performance of Bring Him Home from the musical Les Miserables.
Our focus today is here and supporting the Where's William campaign.
Local politicians spoke up.
I can only imagine as a father and as a parent the grief and the anxiety that the family is going through.
There were TV news reports.
Let's continue to work together to bring William home.
There were billboards. Thousands of leaflets were distributed.
Where's William Week, the search for little William Tyrrell. I'm wearing the badge that they've released. They're putting out flyers. They're asking for everyone to get involved, get on board.
William's foster parents were driving this behind the scenes, although the state government barred them from speaking publicly because William was a child in care.
William is a little boy who needs to be home with his family.
So instead, they provided a written statement.
Please, please, whoever you are, if you know something about William's disappearance, please help police find our little boy.
Tens of thousands of people took part in Walk for William events right across Australia.
They're looking at what is called a Walk for William. Now, these will be held across New South Wales as well as in Queensland.
Other walks took place in New York, Canada, New Zealand, Japan and Ireland.
Now, we are expecting up to 1,000 people to pack into the Kendall Showgrounds.
The Kendall Showgrounds had been the focus of the search effort after William first went missing.
Big round of applause too for Gary and his team. It's obviously a distressing time for them and they've been doing a fantastic job.
Everybody involved in the search was invited to say thank you. There were flags and cake and a big book for people to sign. And Gary spoke.
We don't have any self-doubt in regards to this investigation. We're going out at hammer and tongs and doing everything that we can do.
And if you signed the book, there was a chance to win a prepaid Visa card. But really, it was part of a covert operation because Gary wanted to identify the people who turned up in case the person responsible for William's disappearance was somewhere among the crowd.
And we had 112 taxi backs between Sydney and Brisbane. We had 1,000 bumper stickers all around the area. We had 100,000 coasters go out around the mid-north coast and around Sydney in key areas.
Well, the whole purpose behind that is that, you know, people have a few drinks and if they know something, they might say something.
Yeah.
And for people that aren't from Australia, do you know what I mean? This was huge and everywhere you turned in Australia, you saw William's face or something about the case, like the Where's William sign. I remember it from being everywhere. And now you don't see them anywhere. What's the sad thing?
Yeah. So everything that we did was strategic.
Yeah.
Claire and Alice Collins are a mother and daughter team who run a small PR company.
There are so many cases of missing children over the years that have just disappeared into people's memory. They don't know about those children because there was no campaign. Everyone knows about William. I'm not saying that's because of us, but the campaign, I think, pushed his face and his message into nearly every single home across Australia.
Working for free alongside the police and foster parents, they organised the Where's William campaign, eventually taking it to the state parliament.
Thank you, Deputy Premier and Minister of Justice and Police, the Honourable Troy Grant.
And those in law enforcement, campaigners and politicians wept openly.
And it starts with William. It starts with we're going to bring him home.
In its first year, the Where's William campaign helped generate thousands of newspaper, magazine and TV news reports. It held over 200 community events, encouraged almost 3,000 new reports of information to Crime Stoppers and almost 200 direct to the police. It was a huge effort and it didn't stop. There was an event in the federal parliament.
This has to resonate with every person in this nation, because Australia can never become that country that just turns the other cheek on this.
And the second anniversary of William's disappearance was marked by the New South Wales Police Commissioner announcing the state's first $1 million reward for information.
That's 1 million reasons why somebody that knows what's happened should come forward and talk to us, and do it soon.
That reward was something else Gary Jubelin, the campaigners, and William's foster parents fought for. Gary got up in front of the TV cameras,
We leave no rock unturned, and if there's stuff that we
announcing a second strike force made up of detectives from across New South Wales to help work through the long list of people whose names had come up in the investigation. The state premier, Mike Baird, spoke about his sense of grief over William's disappearance.
It's an incredibly difficult thing to watch as a parent. Every parent across the nation sits and is absolutely in the sense of deep grief with that family.
And privately, Mike Baird would go up to Gary and tell him, whatever you need in this investigation, you've got it.
I want to pay tribute to Gary and his team. We have the best police, I think, in the world.
All of which is hugely impressive. But another year passed without any answers. And listening to William's foster parents, it sounds like things felt very different for them by the second anniversary.
We created our Where's William campaign to keep William alive in the public's conscious. You can't forget about this boy. You cannot forget about William. Yep. He's 3 years old. And I don't think the public can say that it's okay that this crime is not solved, because it's not okay. And we need to hold police to account, and we need to push it, and it needs to be solved.
Holding police to account is different to the simple trust they described once feeling in the police force.
And I think part of what's helped us is we've had Gary, who has kept it going.
I saw it as the sort of pinnacle of my career. You go through stages in your career where you're learning your trade as a homicide detective. Then you're feeling a little bit comfortable. You're up to leading an investigation. And then you get to the point where I was in my career as one of the most experienced homicide detectives in the state, if not the country. And to lead an investigation like this, I felt comfortable doing it. I felt that I had the skills. I felt that I had the energy. I felt that I had the experience. And so I wasn't overawed by leading the William Tyrrell investigation.
When Gary talks about leading, he means leading the 2 strike forces now working on it, as well as his team in the homicide squad who all worked on William's disappearance. But none of them were working only on this job. They all had other cases. In the course of half a day that I spent with Gary in Kendal around this time, talking about William's disappearance, he took a dozen phone calls about other murders he was leading right across New South Wales.
Like, you're working round the clock, weekends, leave. I didn't know whether I was working or not. I was working 24/7. But making those sacrifices, it was worth it because you knew you were doing it for the right reason and to help the families find justice.
You talk about making sacrifices. Were you also prepared to make enemies to do that job?
I don't seek to make enemies, but if someone is in the way of doing a homicide investigation efficiently and effectively, they put barriers in place. And
you're talking about other cops now.
I'm talking about other cops. I talk about lazy cops, whether they're junior to me or my colleagues, or the ones that I particularly didn't like were the senior police that put their career ahead of what we're meant to be doing as homicide detectives. I think anyone that's a committed police officer would be changed. It changes your view on life. You know that you've got an awesome responsibility, a heavy responsibility that weighs on you, that you've got to do the right thing. So that's what drove me without doubt. But sometimes you just got to stand up for what's right. Sometimes it's not easy. No one likes confrontation. I don't like confrontation. I'm good at it if it gets to confrontation, but I don't like it.
You once told me that when you're working a homicide investigation, you'll go in like a bulldozer and people will get hurt.
Yep.
What did you mean by that?
The very nature of homicide investigation, if people think you can tippy-toe around the homicide investigation, you're living in la-la land. Homicide investigation is about finding out what's happened. I'm not talking about breaking rules here or going too far. I'm talking about you've got to go after a person. You've got to hunt that person, find that person, and gather the evidence.
Gary's drive and determination was matched by some of those who worked on the strike force into William's disappearance. His officer in charge, Craig Lambert, was a former kickboxing champion. The two men would actually spar together in a car park outside the police station. Another detective, Louise Curry, was a former Olympic athlete. In 2016, a few months short of the 3rd anniversary of William's disappearance, Louise challenged Gary, saying she didn't believe there was enough information to exclude William's foster parents as suspects. She wanted to pull them back in for interview. Gary agreed, and he sprung it on the couple without warning, pretending to invite them to a normal meeting, then taking them off separately under escort to windowless interview rooms, where Louise had planned the questions. Transcripts of these recorded interviews show both detectives asked William's foster parents about things that would turn up years later in the theory now being pursued by the New South Wales police force, or in leaks from the police to the media. Like how William wasn't wearing shoes at the time of the last known photo of him, and the timing of exactly when William's foster mother says she spoke to a neighbour outside. At one point, Gary asks William's foster father whether the 3-year-old might have hurt himself accidentally, and his foster mum covered it up. Never likely, William's foster father replies. Could it have been a driveway tragedy where William was hit and killed accidentally by one of their cars? No. Could William's foster grandmother have done something terrible by accident and his foster mum cover it up? William's foster father says these police theories are completely laughable. The detectives also challenge William's foster mother about how she deleted a text from her husband saying he was on his way back to the house. Gary Jubelin puts it to her that William might have fallen from the balcony or a tree, and she panicked and covered it up. She denies this. You understand why the accusing finger gets pointed back this way, Gary asks her, because invariably it's the people that had care or custody of the child. William's foster mother says no. She repeats it, no, no, never. Gary Jubelin doesn't ask her about the drive though, where William's foster mother says she got into her mum's car and went down the road towards the crossroads. William's foster mother starts to bring this up, but Gary asks her about something else, and they never come back to it. After William's foster parents were interrogated, they go home, not knowing the police have fitted their car with a listening device.
Notice they only mentioned that she left the house once. She actually left twice in that time. Just thought that was interesting. I was waiting to hear if they said the second one, but they didn't.
Yeah,
And
it's
she
very
left.
interesting.
Device. The couple say nothing, either in the car or in their interviews with the detectives, for the strike force to decide that, yes, they should be suspects. Instead, asked in her interview what she thinks happened to William, his foster mother talks about the two cars she says she remembers seeing parked on the road that morning. I also wonder about Paul, she says. I'm thinking if those two cars are there, they're visiting him. I just find Paul really odd.
Good, I'm good to go.
This is an electronically recorded interview between Detective Chief Inspector Jubilant and Mr. Paul Savage at Port Macquarie Police Station.
Paul Savage lives opposite the house where William was last seen. And you can't miss Paul. Pretty much every time I've been on Benaroon Drive, he comes out to say hello or see what's going on.
The time is 12:42 p.m. on Wednesday, the 16th of August 2017.
Paul was 70 when William went missing, but still fit. He walked in the bush every morning. In person, he's earnest and awkward, but there's something raw about him, as if he's always on the edge of a big emotion.
Assisting with this interview today is Detective Sergeant Laura Beecroft.
Paul had seen William before he was reported missing at a party on Benaroon Drive months earlier.
For the record, Sergeant Beecroft, could you please state your name and full rank?
Detective Sergeant Laura Beecroft.
After again ruling out William's foster parents, Laura Beecroft was the detective who initially took the lead in investigating Paul.
Mr. Savage, I'm going to ask you some questions about the disappearance of 3-year-old missing boy William Tyrrell. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Paul agreed to do this interview voluntarily, and he didn't have a lawyer present.
My questions and any answers you give will be recorded on this machine. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And his account of what happened that morning is complicated.
Do you understand that you're free to leave the police station today at any time you wish?
Yes.
The last known photo of William is taken at 9:37 in the morning of the 12th of September 2014. At 9:39, a phone call is made from Paul's house opposite to Casino Hospital, where his brother was being treated.
Was he getting out of hospital or something?
Yeah.
What was that? And so you were going to facilitate him getting him out?
Yeah.
That call lasts 8 or 9 minutes. Afterwards, Paul goes outside and can hear children playing over the road.
William's playing up there. You can hear him.
I heard kids playing. I didn't say it was them. I said I heard kids playing, squealing.
Take it from me. They're the only kids playing in the street.
About 20 minutes later, so around 10:10, some other neighbours hear the sound of a car on gravel. There's gravel at the top of Benaroon Drive, between Paul's house and the house where William is reported missing. Shortly after, Paul's wife, Heather, leaves home.
She left home at 10:38.
10:38, okay.
I let her know what the time was because she would be late for bingo.
10:38. Paul's specific about this time. He repeats it.
Heather hadn't left till 10:38.
And says the same in different interviews. But CCTV shows Heather must have left earlier, about 10:30. At 10:41, there's a phone call from Paul's house to a medical centre in Port Macquarie. And around that time, a neighbour also knocks on Paul's door.
She said, have you heard, did you know the little boy down the road's gone missing?
Paul says he walks over to the house where William was last seen.
I come straight out and walked over to see if I could help.
He speaks to William's foster grandmother.
She said he was out here playing.
And also speaks to the neighbours.
Peter and Tyrrell.
Only Peter and Sherelle will later say that they didn't see Paul Savage that morning.
And then you walked up into the bush.
That's right.
Okay.
I said, well, I'll go up in the bush in case it went up that way.
Paul says everyone else was looking for William down Benaroon Drive, so he turned up the road, alone, where a dirt trail leads into the forest.
Now, describe what you did in the bush. You indicated that's the rough area that you walked.
At a guess, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In the general area, that's the area that you walked.
That's right.
Okay. And you also indicated that you got a little bit lost.
Which I did.
Where did you get lost?
Oh, just walking down here, I couldn't remember where my backyard was. So I've come down here, and that's why I've come around here.
Okay. And what did you do after so you've taken it, you're trying to help, you're telling me that you're trying to help and look for this child.
Yeah.
And you've gone off in the bush, and I think you've described it as for 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Couldn't remember.
You've walked up round the bush for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
After those 30 minutes, Paul says he comes home without seeing anyone. But he doesn't go down the road to ask if William's been found or talk to anyone to let them know which area of bush he's just searched.
You didn't think to go back and say, hey, he's not up there, or have you found him? You've just gone back in and had a cup of tea.
Well, everybody else is making that much noise. What's the good of me going out?
Hey, Matt. Welcome in. Good to see you.
Hi, Matt.
They're enjoying a crowd of people when they're running around like chook with their throat cut.
You weren't even curious. You go in there and have a cup of tea.
I don't have to be curious, but I can hear everybody else looking for the little boy.
So you know he's still lost and you're having a cup of tea.
Well, what else do you want me to do?
Perhaps go out there and help look.
I just had a look, and I was thirsty after a walk. I presume that's why
you're thirsty. You walk for 2 hours a day.
Paul says he stays inside the house for 10 minutes. In a separate interview, he'll say it was 15 minutes. But neither of those times really add up. Looking at the timings, if Paul walked in the bush for 30 minutes, as he says, he must have been home alone, drinking tea, for nearly 2 hours.
Yeah, well, and once I finished in there and the brother-in-law and them showed up.
Paul says he leaves his house just as his brother and sister-in-law arrive for a planned visit. And they say they got there about 1 p.m. Though in another interview, Paul says he left his house, walked over the road, talked to William's foster grandmother and a police officer, then came back and only then saw his relative's car pull up.
Was it just pure coincidence? You're sitting in there having a cup of tea with all this commotion, the biggest commotion Benaroon Drive's ever seen, and you just happen to decide to come out just when your brother-in-law and sister-in-law turn up?
Now, well, what else would you call
it? I'd call it the remarkable coincidence.
Well, I've got nothing to be ashamed of.
You've nothing to be ashamed of?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so I have questions. In an earlier interview with the police, Paul says he's pretty sure he didn't know that his relatives were coming to visit that day. But in this interview with Gary Jubelin, he says maybe he did know.
I can't remember, but I dare say it was because Heather's brother and sister-in-law were due to arrive. They were coming to visit us.
Paul himself was also due to leave that morning at 11 to drive 4 hours north to Casino, where his brother was getting out of hospital. But it's unsure when Paul called his brother that day to say he wasn't coming, and why Heather didn't seem to notice anyone out in the street earlier that morning when she left for bingo, given we know at least William's foster mother, grandmother, and possibly one neighbour were out there around that time looking for him. Heather died in the months after William went missing.
Since Heather passed away, I haven't left this area.
Right.
I feel like I'm turning my back on her.
And look, your love for Heather, I know it's strong, and you walked around with a picture around your neck for a month or so, as I understand it.
In case you didn't catch that, Paul agrees that he carried a picture of Heather around his neck for a month after she died. Paul himself spoke to police on the day William was reported missing, but his house wasn't searched until 3 days later.
Hi, beautiful Mrs. T. Welcome in, my darling.
Hi, Mrs. T.
A year later, a detective spoke to Paul again at home, and again in January 2016. 2 months after that, in March, Detective Sergeant Laura Beecroft spent 4 hours with Paul taking a formal witness statement, where he described spending half an hour in the bush searching for William on his own and how he got a bit lost. Paul has said the same thing to me in person, though he didn't want to be recorded. And I've got questions about that also. In Kendal, after talking to Paul, I walk up the hill from the house where William was reported missing, trying to get lost. Paul used to walk this track every day, and he said that it's quite easy to get lost through the bush here. Even from here, you're still just in sight of the roofs of the houses. But if you were looking for a child, and you set off away from the track like this, then suddenly it seems quite different. The bush kind of swallows you up on either side. Hang on. It is pretty thick and it is pretty tangled, but the space between the track that I've turned off and the houses on Benaroon Drive itself isn't that big. So there is a little track here, it might just be an animal track. And then it kind of almost disappears, but I'm going to take it and follow it. The longer I spend doing this, the harder I find it to understand Paul's explanation of his actions, because having been here, you get these glimpses of the houses through the trees, and there's a couple of tracks, and everything is on a slope back down to the houses of Benaroon Drive. And then you walk through here for a while and you hit this creek, which is in front of me. So it's currently dry, it's maybe 5 meters wide, but I'm not a local. I've been here maybe half a dozen times now, but I knew that creek runs behind the houses. And so Paul must have known if he walked here every day. And if I follow this creek down through the forest, it's very quickly I do see the sun shining off the roof of one of the houses behind Benaroon Drive. So Paul's getting lost in an area that is contained by the first track he walked off on, which is basically a fire trail, the slope of the hill, and then the dry creek. I do struggle to see how he got lost, but I'm not in Paul's mind. And so my experience of this today is not Paul's experience. And the problem is now, to get out of the bush, I think I'm going to have to walk through someone's garden. And in fact, the garden I'm walking through is Paul Savage's garden. Another thing that caught the detective's attention was in March 2016, when Paul found a covert surveillance camera on a tree in the bush surrounding his property. So obviously the camera wasn't very covert. The police had put it there to keep an eye on someone else, because at this point, they're investigating more than one of what they called persons of interest. And one thing I do know about Gary Jubelin is he loves a covert surveillance operation. This surveillance camera kept recording as Paul picked it up, looked straight into it, then took the camera inside.
When police are working and looking around this area, you find the camera and just hang on to it. If the police didn't turn up, would have you just hung on to it forever?
No, I would have taken that into Laurelton Police.
When would have you taken it into?
I'm not quite sure how long. I didn't have it all that long.
Well,
How long did he have it for?
you had the camera, Mr. Savage, for approximately 5 weeks.
I don't know about it being that long.
I can tell
I'll
you.
go along with
I'll
it,
tell
yeah.
you, you've had the camera for 5 weeks.
Well,
That's not a small amount of time.
The voice you can hear there is Detective Sergeant Laura Beecroft, who is the detective looking at Paul Savage. Based on what she told him, Gary Jubelin decided to make Paul the focus of the Strike Force's investigation, and Paul's home and phones are placed under surveillance. The police also put a tracker on his car. 2 undercover cops are sent in to talk to Paul, one posing as a freelance journalist, the other as a psychic, both wanting to talk about William Tyrrell. And the listening devices are recording. And the police are waiting to see how Paul reacts. Now, if you're thinking that sounds similar to what police did with their previous person of interest, Bill Spedding, using covert surveillance, then dialing up the pressure to see if someone will crack, then yeah, it's from the same playbook. I told you, Gary likes a surveillance operation. And one thing Gary himself was focused on was the fact that Paul also had a history of approaching people when he might not be welcome, including William's foster grandmother.
No one's ever asked you to stay away from a house because you make them feel uncomfortable?
that's right.
No one's ever done that?
Not that I know.
Okay.
He really sounds like the most charming person to interview or live next to or be around, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Like, I just wish he was my neighbour.
Oh, yeah.
But William's foster grandmother had done that, asking Paul's wife Heather to pass on the message.
Well, if that's it, I used to go up there and I'd ask her, did she want a hand? I was worried about her.
And Heather didn't relay to you to stay away because you're making her feel uncomfortable? Think about this.
Yeah, I am. I'm trying to remember. Yeah.
None of this is evidence that Paul had anything to do with William's disappearance. But Gary does go on, raising the fact that there's an apprehended violence order in place against Paul, preventing him from approaching the local postwoman. That postwoman didn't want to talk about it when I call her, but court documents say that in the years before William was reported missing, more than once, Paul did approach her, crying and shaking, saying, "I love you," or "I want to spend more time with you," or followed the postwoman in his car saying, "I can't live like this, not seeing you." Eventually, Australia Post stopped delivering to Paul's house. Then, after the AVO was granted, Paul approached the postwoman again, saying he wanted to wish her a happy birthday. He was charged and pleaded guilty to breaching an AVO. But when...
My God, the poor post lady.
Yeah.
How much she would have went through.
Oh, Lord.
When questioned about it by Gary, Paul denies his behaviour was threatening, calling the court case a conspiracy.
The AVO was a load of crap.
Explain to me how you stalking a woman is a setup.
I never stalked her at any time.
So it's all lies?
Yes.
So when you went into the post office crying and shaking, that was a lie. And everyone that saw it said it was a lie.
When did I go in there crying? I went in there once and I was upset and I was crying.
Why were you upset and crying?
Because I was feeling really depressed. So I went home and I went straight back and I apologised.
Right. And when the police issued an AVO,
yeah,
What happened after that?
After the OBO?
Yeah.
Bloody nothing.
You didn't get charged?
Oh, yeah, because I got 1 day's notice to get help.
1 day's notice to get help? What are you talking about?
Well, I had to be in court on Tuesday. I got the thing on Saturday night to front up in court. I had no idea what I had to do.
Look, Mr. Savage.
What?
I think we need to take a step back. I'm not sitting here in judgment of you, but what I can't sit here and is take lies. Okay?
Okay, then throw that in the bin because that's a pack of rubbish.
It's not a pack of rubbish.
It is a pack of rubbish. It's a load of rubbish. Yeah. Well, you ask her.
I have asked her.
Okay, then you ask her, why did she ring me in July, 3 months after I got the ABO on me? Why did she ring me and tell me she loved me?
She loves you.
That's what she said.
Let's get this clear. Yeah. You're telling me that this wasn't you stalking her. She was in love with you.
I didn't stalk her.
But she's in love with you.
She might have been.
You can hear it in Paul's voice now, the pressure building. And at his home, the listening devices were in place. The transcript of what's recorded on just one of those devices in Paul's kitchen runs to over 100 pages. Though the quality of the devices themselves wasn't great, so there's gaps in the recordings where no one can make out what Paul is saying, or places where the transcript says file does not exist. And in other places, there's disputes between detectives, with one saying they heard one thing and another saying they heard something else. What you can say is that almost always Paul is talking on his own, sometimes ranting at the television. Often it seems like he's talking to his dead wife, Heather. He calls her Angel, or more often, Mum. He breaks down sobbing, or seems bitter, saying things like, "You set me up, don't lie, lunatic," or "No one will know it was you." Listening to these recordings, Gary Jubelin decided to increase the pressure.
Okay, recording. Where are we going?
Was this track where the police under Gary Jubelin left the Spider-Man suit for Paul Savage to find, deliberately left it for him to find on his morning walk? A Spider-Man suit was what 3-year-old William Tyrrell was wearing on the morning he was reported missing. And at this point, Paul Savage is under pressure. He's got listening devices in his house, listening device in his car, his phone calls are being recorded, and the idea is just to increase that pressure. But putting a Spider-Man suit, last identified with a disappeared 3-year-old, on the path of his morning walk. I mean, I've said this to Gary Jubelin, it sounds crazy, but they did it and then they watched his reaction. The people watching Paul's reaction were specialised surveillance officers, brought up from Sydney and waiting, hidden in the scrub on either side. Paul walks up wearing an Akubra hat with a water bottle hanging over his shoulder. He gets to the suit and stops a few metres from where it lies. And Paul looks. 1, 2, 3, 4. The waiting police count 12 seconds. And at the same time, they're filming Paul and taking photographs. And unfortunately, all of the photos we've seen, taken by the surveillance police who were hiding in the bushes on either side, none of them show Paul and the Spider-Man suit in the same frame. So none of them conclusively show that he is definitely looking at that suit. They show that he's looking in the direction of where the suit is known to be. And the specialist surveillance cops who were in the bushes reported that they saw him looking at the suit. But because you haven't got that one bit of photographic evidence that proves it conclusively, it's always open to doubt. What's not open to doubt is that Paul does not report seeing the suit that morning. Instead, he goes home, where the listening device records him saying something like, "have to do it." Though on the transcript, one detective has added a comment that says, Possibly, why did I have to do it? Or why did they have to do it? It's not certain. So the next day, the police left the suit out waiting for Paul again. You've got this guy under surveillance. You want to know what he might know, either to include him or to exclude him from your investigation, so you just dial up the pressure. I mean, there's a whole question about how fair that is, or how much trauma you might be exposing this guy to. But then you rationalize that if you're the police by saying, we're investigating a possible child abduction. So almost anything we do is okay because we're trying to put right that wrong. The next day, Paul leaves for his morning walk at 7:33 a.m.
Hi, beautiful kitty Witty. Welcome in.
Hi, Kitty Witty.
At 7:37, the waiting police watch him stop, bend over to look at the Spider-Man suit, then stand, walk back the way he came. Paul starts to run as he enters his driveway, and within minutes he's on the phone, reporting seeing the suit to the police. And later that same morning, Paul's recorded on a listening device in his house, saying the suit wasn't there yesterday. He couldn't have missed it, and sobbing the word mum.
It's almost like the Truman Show. I kind of think it would be quite hard to come through this and not have that in the back of your mind for a long time.
I don't think anyone's come through this investigation unscathed. Because once you've had the experience, like on your morning walk, you literally had police on either side hiding, watching you. How you ever let that go, particularly if you're innocent. But then the police's job is to establish whether or not you're innocent. And so the question is, how far is it okay for them to go to establish your innocence or your guilt? In his interview with Paul Savage, Gary Jubelin goes at him hard, accusing Paul of lying about whether he saw that suit the first morning.
This fascinates me that you can sit here and lie to me like that when I know and you know you're telling a lie.
No, I'm not. I'm not lying. I walked up there, I seen that suit, and I went straight back home. I rang the police, and I...
No, it just fascinates me that you can lie like this.
I'm not lying. I'm not lying. I'm not interested in lying. What's the use of lying?
Well, then, if you don't think you're lying, then you're totally delusional. And everything you're telling me comes in the...
Yeah, maybe I should have kept my nose out and just left it to rot there.
Well, you considered that the first day.
Did
you
not.
waited for 24 hours.
I went straight down and reported it.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
I know you're lying.
I'm not lying.
Back at Paul's home, the listening devices are recording as he repeatedly denies seeing the Spider-Man suit on the first of the 2 days police left it on the bush track. Paul says other things to himself also. One day, Paul says, No, he tells me what he's going to do. No, he tells me that he's going to, whether I want it or not. No, yeah, well, I'm going to run into your property too. This is my place. You're in my place. You do what I want. You're a little boy. You're nobody. You're just a little boy. You're nobody. You don't tell me. I'll tell you. I did tell you. Another time he says murderers are sick and child abusers a rotten bit of rubbish. Paul accuses Gary Jubelin of setting him up and insists on his innocence over anything to do with William Tyrrell. He says police are going to try and square it up on me. I haven't got a witness. It's all lies. He says he now won't help police. I was going to tell them about the 2 boys, but bugger it. He says, I couldn't hurt a kid. And later, I haven't deliberately hurt anything or anybody in a long, long time. Paul says he can't sleep because of the police investigation, meaning the pressure is getting to him. He talks about his dead wife, Heather, saying he's sorry, saying, quote, he's a boy. And great, they're going to find something, Mum. Don't dob on me, okay? And, oh, Mum, what do I do? What do I do? Later the same day, Paul says, "What is it, God? And forgive me, please. What did I do, Ma? What did I do?" And a couple of days later, on the 10th of September 2017, Paul moans and possibly talks in his sleep, saying, "It is what it is, and you've done it again. You've done it again. You're going overboard, you know." On the 11th of September 2017, that's one day before the 3rd anniversary of William's disappearance, Paul says, "It's in the paper. That's the last time I seen him. And 'cause it's true, it's true. If I don't remember 'cause it's true, other people stirring things up." And he says, "Get it right, mate. They had no proof, nothing, because there can't be. Nothing ever happened." And he says his memories are gone. He says, "I can't remember anything. If you tell me what you were doing on 11:35 on the 12th of fucking September in 2014, can you remember?" And he says to himself, but I think he's imagining talking to Gary, "I've not lied to you once. I might have forgotten things, I might have twisted them up, but I've not lied. I don't lie to you, I make mistakes." And that, I think, is all that you can take from the thousands of hours of listening device recordings, that Paul can be mistaken, meaning even Paul Savage sometimes doesn't know whether his own thoughts are accurate.
So I then
look. I actually look. Stop. I'm not interested in you making up your lies.
I'm not making up lies.
All right, we'll move on to the next thing. Okay, but was that sound? We'll just have to change some tapes. So the time now is 2:33 p.m. The interview between Detective Chief Inspector Jublin and Mr. Paul Savage is suspended.
During this break in his interview with the detectives, Paul leaves the room to use the toilet. Unrecorded, the two detectives, Laura Beecroft and Gary Jublin, talk about whether they think Paul really did see the Spider-Man suit that they left on the bush track on the first day or only on the second, as Paul claims. Laura thinks Paul's telling the truth, but Gary Jublin still has questions. The interview resumes.
Electronically recorded interview between Detective Chief Inspector Gary Jublin and Mr. Paul Savage recommence. The time is 2:42 p.m.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll continue on with the interview.
Outside the interview room, disagreement between the detectives is starting to divide the police strike force. Not all of them are as driven as Gary Jublin or Craig Lambert, the two leaders. Some are less motivated or unhappy to be there or have other human failings. One member of the strike force will later leave the cops after an internal investigation found he had sex in his police car while on duty, took photos of his genitalia in the office, and pretended to be at work when he wasn't. And others among the strike force are also hard to manage. Some start to disagree with Gary's focus on Paul Savage, and Gary's answer is always to keep working.
If you're sitting there and you honestly believe you're telling me the truth about the Spider-Man suit, I know you're lying. And that
No, you don't. I'm telling you the truth. I never seen it the day before. Why would I leave it a day and then go down and ring up? Why would I do that?
Because you're involved in the abduction of William Tyrrell.
Bloody rubbish. I am not lying. Why would I bother lying? This is bloody ridiculous. I'm not a liar.
At the same time he is running this investigation, Gary's also going through a divorce, his second, and his strike force is starting to founder under the sheer weight of their workload. By the end of 2017, they have over 14,000 separate products, meaning reports or photographs or documents to work through about William. They have listening device recordings still to go through. Some of those on the strike force, like Craig Lambert, have thousands of tasks allocated to them. Craig later describes their workload saying, quote, "From start to finish of my shift, I'm literally churning through these products as quickly as possible. It was a race against myself to get them done. On to the next. Bang, 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 bang." Police records show Gary's repeatedly asking for more staff, but his staff numbers are cut instead by his bosses. And stuff gets missed, and information keeps on coming in, not least because the Where's William campaign keeps encouraging people to come forward. Meaning, despite everything the police are doing to exclude them, the number of people on their persons of interest list keeps increasing. There is a difficulty in targeting any person of interest, as we have literally no evidence, Gary writes in one report to his bosses. He warns the investigation could go on for years.
I'll strip it down. I won't even call you Mr. Savage. I'll call you Paul.
Yeah, well, that's the best way.
Okay. Because we're getting down to the nitty gritty.
Yeah, which is good.
Gary's strike force start turning on each other, criticising him between themselves, and particularly Gary's focus on Paul Savage. Some of the junior detectives even drive up to Kendal, walk out along the bush track and try to prove Paul couldn't have seen the Spider-Man suit that first morning when he did not report it. Only they can't prove it, and their mini investigation is kind of farcical. They don't even take a tape measure to make sure they know where Paul was standing. But it does prove that Gary's grip on his team is slipping, and he can no longer trust them to back each other and his leadership. Gary keeps on working, pushing himself and the team around him harder. He makes some bad decisions. 3 times in 2017 and 2018, Gary visits Paul at home alone. Their conversations are recorded on the listening devices and also on Gary's mobile. Gary also records a phone conversation with Paul, asking again about the Spider-Man suit.
Hello, Paul. Gary Jubilant here from the police.
At the same time, Gary's preparing to hold an inquest into William's disappearance. The sole reason Gary wants to have this inquest is to pressure Paul, to ask him everything. How he got lost in the bush, the listening device recordings, the Spider-Man suit, whether he did or didn't see it. But preparing for the inquest means even more work for the strike force, which is now disintegrating, to the point that Gary and his officer in charge, Craig Lambert, physically square off against each other in the offices of the homicide squad and have to be separated. Craig, who thinks the continued pursuit of Paul Savage is wrong-headed and a waste of time, has his gun taken from him and is escorted from the building. Gary goes back to work. The inquest is due to start in months, in March 2019. There are other persons of interest other than Paul that Gary asks his team to look at. On top of this, on the 19th of January, weeks out from the inquest, Gary is sent to northern New South Wales, a 7-hour drive from Sydney, to investigate the shooting of 2 police officers. The next day, the 20th of January, he's sent to Newcastle to lead another murder investigation. 2 days later, on the 22nd, Gary is told that he's under internal investigation and taken off all active homicide cases, meaning he never works on the disappearance of William Tyrrell again. In March 2019, Paul gave evidence at the inquest looking at what happened to William. He said his memory was now a bit cloudy and gave some of his evidence in private, behind closed doors. So we don't know if Paul was asked about what he said on those listening device recordings, or whether he did see the Spider-Man suit on that first day, or only on the second, like he told the police.
I did not see the suit the day before, or I would have reported it.
How? Okay.
And speaking of listening device recordings, after Paul Savage leaves this interview with the detectives, he's recorded on a listening device in his car saying, "Make sure you don't tell anyone, love. They're right after me. Don't tell anyone, love. Please, they're right after me. Sorry." And we don't know if he was ever asked about that as well. Years later, when I go up to Kendal for this podcast, I park on Benneroon Drive and Paul walks up. We get talking. Paul tells me he did see the suit. He doesn't want to be recorded, but I make shorthand notes as he's talking. Paul says on the first day he saw only the top and thought, I don't know about that. And maybe it was some other kids who left it. He says the next day he saw the whole suit. He says he did think of William Tyrrell when he saw half the suit, but because it was only the top, he thought it wasn't important. On the second day, when he saw the whole suit, Paul says, I thought it was probably his, William's. He says, I felt hopeful. I hoped we could solve the case. I ask him why he didn't tell the police this at the time, and Paul doesn't really explain it. He says, I've left it a bit longer than I should have, but it will come out eventually. Only it hasn't until now. At the inquest, one of the detectives, Laura Beecroft, said she didn't think Paul was still what she called an active person of interest. But at that point, Laura herself was no longer on the strike force, so couldn't be certain. But one of the detectives who's still working on the investigation gave evidence about Paul in a separate court hearing. That detective, Mark Jukes, said, there was no exculpatory evidence that I was aware of that could completely eliminate Paul Savage from the investigation. In court, Mark said his view was that Paul should not be written out of the case. That was in February 2019, just after Gary Jubelin was taken off it. But I think that's what happened. The police are no longer looking at Paul Savage. And Paul is 80 now, and even he admits his memories can be mistaken, meaning there are still unanswered questions. Nina, the producer on this podcast, spoke to Paul on the phone last week, and he said no one from the police had been to talk to him since Gary was taken off the investigation. And that decision to take Gary off the investigation, that changed everything. And we'll get into that in detail next week on Witness William Tyrrell.
This electronic interview between Detective Inspector Jubelin and Paul Savage is now concluded. Before I turn the tapes off, ask you a couple of questions. Has any threat, promise or inducement been held out to you to give the answers you were given in this interview?
No.
Have you provided these answers of your own free will?
Yes.
Is there anything further you wish to say in relation to this matter?
Nothing, no more I can say. I can't help it. I wish I could.
All right, thank you.
A lot of different people have been involved in making this series. Among them, the executive producer is Nina Young. The sound.
So that's this week's. I just wanted to show one more thing.
Okay.
When my computer wants to work for me. So when they were talking about, the Where's William that they had up, it's still like it's still up. As we said, they just don't have the stickers and that around. But this up the top is the Where's William sticker that was around everywhere. Or you had this one. That was also a sticker. And this is a website that's just got different things. 2 minutes a reward.
Yeah.
So there's a gallery in there. He's so beautiful.
Oh, he is. He really is.
So I'll put the link to this in the chat if anyone does want to come in and have a look. There's news on it about the campaign, downloads, what I think is just the poster.
Okay.
Okay, there's a couple of different things in there. Donations, how people can help. But I think a lot of people stopped giving it to them because a lot of it was going to the foster parents.
Yeah.
So that's the Where's William. Oh, you heard it too. So yeah, just thought I'd share that because they were talking about it. So the next week for William will be, by the sound of it, Gary Jubelin, because he was such a big part of this case. But Friday we will be doing our Easter special. Now, the only thing I do have with it is I do want people to be in the chat to win the prizes. I have 4 prizes to have for Easter. We have 4 different eggs, and we're going to have different things going where you can win an egg, what will win you a prize. But we want to have people in the chat to win it. So please come along Friday. I'll put the thing up tomorrow for it. And other than that, I think we'll see everyone then. Is there anything else?
No, not really. Just apologising for the audio issues.
And we got it fixed in the end.
Yes.
But yeah. All right then, my darlings. I will see you all on Friday. Thanks, everyone.
See you, everyone.
Every true crime on the rise. Investigate the scene, uncover the lies. From Melbourne to Sydney, all the way to